Welcome to the Performance Banker Podcast. You'll hear banking industry experts providing unique insights and expertise to help bankers achieve higher performance, obtain outstanding results, and gain a competitive advantage. Here's your host, Tanya Gossage.
Hi, everyone. This is Lorie Walker standing in today for Tanya Gossage. Welcome back to the Performance Banker Podcast. Like my colleague Jeffrey Yarbrough said a few weeks ago, we at Gossage Performance Consulting believe that leadership means you don't have to do it all by yourself. As a leader, you can achieve results through others, and at times, there are some of those others that can present challenges in you achieving the results and goals that you set out to reach. As Jeffrey mentioned in his episode, there are 4 actions to take to address poor performance. He shared the first 2 with you. Number 1 was the need to over-clarify, so everyone on your team knows how things fit together. This way, everyone knows what their job is. Number 2 was understanding the cost of poor performance. Poor performance can have a very detrimental and costly effect on your culture and your team. I'm going to dive right into our 3rd tip in dealing with poor performers. And that 3rd tip is to strategically address poor performance. In other words, have a plan before you have a talk with that poor performer. Oftentimes, in the heat of the moment, so to speak, we as managers tend to react and not have the best approach with our employee. It may be simply that we're frustrated because we're having to address something that's a recurring issue and that you've had prior conversations about. One reason you could be having the recurring issue is that a strategic objective was missing in your earlier conversations. Could it be that maybe the employee thinks the issue you're discussing isn't that big of a deal? If so, then it is time to prepare for your next conversation with a strategy in mind. What type of infractions could it be? Well, it could be tardiness, absenteeism, spending too much time on personal phone calls, cutting corners with bank procedures, or being delinquent on required compliance training. In prior conversations, perhaps there was no significant consequence to what was done wrong. This time, in your next conversation, think of how you can deepen the seriousness of that infraction. In order for this approach to work, first, the employee would have to acknowledge that there is even a problem in the first place. We've all heard, acceptance is the first step to healing, or acceptance is the first step towards change, and so forth. Well, in this case, acceptance is the first step to your strategic objective. Now that they've taken ownership of their problem, have them tell you how they are going to fix it. Then thank them for taking ownership, and when you see that they have made changes and they fixed the issue, then thank them for keeping their commitment to improve. So let's use this in an example. For my bankers that are listening, we all know how important opening and closing procedures are. Let's say you're a branch manager, and on Mondays, the opening employees are scheduled to arrive at 7:30. You have an employee, Anna, that notoriously is always just a bit behind schedule. Whenever the team sees that she's on the schedule for Monday, then they already know that Anna's not going to be there on time like they will, that she's not going to pull her weight as a teammate. How do you think that impacts her teammates? But Anna's always been this way. She knows that you and her teammates know that she lives the farthest from the branch, so that she has the longest commute from anyone. And she also knows that you don't really say anything to her about it because you understand her plight. She knows that when you mention punctuality in your team meetings, that you're just saying that for the sake of the group, but you don't intend it for it to apply to her because you know her situation. At least that's how she rationalizes her behavior. Do you have an Anna? If so, then it's time for a conversation with a strategic objective. So how would you address this with Anna? Here are some tips. First off, meet with her in private. Meet with her in private with the intention of addressing her poor performance head on. Don't humiliate her. While you want to get her attention, you want to do so without injuring her dignity. For example, you may bring to her attention how it impacts the team when she's not there to open the branch on time, or how it may impact the team's ability to be ready to properly serve the customers because of running behind with opening procedures. Then ask at this point if she can see how this is an issue. Now, if she doesn't see it, then that's a whole different issue to address. Also, remind her of any company core values or standards that her tardiness may impact, like integrity, commitment, dependability, or teamwork. For example, say, when you're not here on time to open the branch, that detracts from our teamwork environment that we pride ourselves on here at the bank. Then ask if she agrees. If she agrees, then there's the possibility of improvement, and you've now started to positively impact your strategic objective. If she doesn't agree, then that tells you that this may not be the right place for her. Now that she's admitted that there's an issue, you're in a great spot to deepen the seriousness of her actions to her. This is because she likely will see that it is up to her. It is her responsibility to take action in the situation. So from here, you can ask her, what is she going to do to specifically address the situation? What is she going to do in order to arrive on time for opening procedures? If she says, I commit to getting here on time, make sure that she specifies when that will start. Will it start this coming Monday? This way, she will know you're going to hold her accountable for this. And when that Monday comes and she's there on time and opening procedures went well, thank her. Acknowledge that she kept her commitment to you and to the team. Let her know you appreciate her doing so. Trust me, acknowledging and showing your appreciation in employees that overcome an issue is like an investment. The return on your investment will be improved performance and an employee that follows procedures and standards repeatedly. If after time the old habits creep in again, then it's time to have another conversation. This time, the strategic objective should be different. Not only are you having a conversation to address the issue of showing up late for opening procedures, but also the fact that the prior commitment to you and to the team has been broken. Anna not keeping her word is actually more of an issue of showing up late. Now the seriousness of her actions is more significant than before. You'll have to let her know that you must have employees on your team that keep their commitments and follow expected guidelines. And if this happens again, so and so will be the consequences. So as you can see, this conversation is different from the first. The seriousness of the consequences of her actions has expanded. This is what has to happen when addressing poor performance. Your employees have to know that you, their manager, is not the type to have the same conversation over and over with no consequences. It's also important to know your company's policies, know your HR policies, and make sure that your consequences are in alignment with them. Your employees will know that instead, their manager will take action when expected guidelines are not followed. They will know they have no future to be a part of your team or the bank. These types of conversations are very effective. In the example, there was no pulling out a long list of past infractions, no down talking the employee, but instead it was straightforward and honest communication. You'll find this to be quite effective. Now on to number 4. It's actually the one that I'm probably the most passionate about. It is to impartially deal with toxic high performers. If the toxicity is not addressed, then your credibility as a manager is shot and the culture of your organization is at risk. So when I say a toxic high performer, do you know of any? These are the employees that are known to hit or transcend their sales goals, or they're known to be the go-to person because they know how everything operates behind the scenes like the back of their hand. However, they also are known to do things on their own terms. They're the ones that get the job done, but they may cut some corners or they may take some shortcuts to get there. Well, when they cut corners and when they take shortcuts and they know how to work the system to make things fit, they also don't follow policy and procedure. They know what they are, they just don't follow them. They feel the policies and procedures don't apply to them because they're so good at what they do. And no one has ever had an issue with how they do things. So what's the big deal? I'll tell you what the big deal is. They are also the ones that seep toxic energy, toxic conversations, and toxic behaviors into your department, your branch, and your company. These toxic high performers are usually allowed to exist because they are indeed your top or considered to be your high performers. Oftentimes, they are the ones that have the best numbers on the team and they're quite talented, yet they are selfish, they are hard to coach, and they are allowed to follow their own rules and they consistently disregard your rules and your guidelines. Even though these individuals are high performers and seem to be your best employees because they are your producers, these are actually employees that are making a joke out of your leadership. Why? It's because you're turning a blind eye to their wrongdoing and their poor performance because of their production. And guess what? The rest of your team knows that as well. They see you're, in a sense, allowing these toxic high performers to control you. What message do you think that you're sending to the rest of the team? Is it a message of, as long as you're producing high numbers, anything goes? Is it that as long as they're producing high numbers, or as long as they're the go-to person for operations, that following policy and procedures is optional? I get it. It's not easy to admit that you're guilty of this. But if you are, just know you are not exercising your leadership in the right way. If you do have anyone like this on your team, know that as long as they're allowed to be that way, they will continue to be toxic. Unless you dig deep and have a conversation with them while keeping in mind tip number one and the need to over clarify expectations, then potentially that toxicity will start to permeate other areas. In addition to clarifying your expectation, you may have to take time to cover the exact policies or procedures that they are not following to the letter. Commend them for their high numbers or their extensive knowledge of operations, but also let them know that there are other aspects of performance that you will hold them accountable for, such as their behavior or adherence to bank policy and procedures. You'll have to make it clear that you must have both aspects of performance from them in order for them to be a part of the team. But what if you have this conversation and the employee decides that they don't want to change? What if they let you know that you're crazy if you want them to change and that you should be happy with the great job they've been doing? You should be happy with the numbers that they've produced. What if they decide to leave and go to work for the competitor? Would you regret addressing their performance? Well, guess what? Your team certainly won't. Trust me, they are watching. They've been watching that person continue to come to work each day and be praised for their job well done. While that was being done, how do you think they've been feeling? I guarantee you, they've not looked at you in the best way. They've watched you overlook their performance to highlight the toxic high performer. Their morale has been low, and likely they haven't been performing at their highest potential. As leaders, there are times when we have to take action and make hard decisions. Sometimes those decisions aren't popular, and sometimes we may make people unhappy, but that's part of leadership. We can't make everyone happy all the time. What you can do, though, is do what's right. And that's what being a good leader is. Temporarily, it just may impact your numbers. Production may go down, and operations may slow down as you try to work through things and figure things out. As you work to fill that opening with the right person, ultimately your team and your workplace environment will benefit long term. The team will thrive and they will be able to function without the weight of knowing there's a teammate that isn't on the same page as they are. You may even see their production increase after the toxic person is no longer there. You've got to be willing to take such measures. That's what confronting poor performance is all about. That's how you exercise your leadership muscles. With exercise comes positive results that you get to see as a result of the discomfort you went through to get there. Addressing poor performers is no different by 1, providing clarity to your team, 2, understanding the cost of poor performance, 3, strategically addressing poor performance, and 4, impartially dealing with poor performers. You and your team will benefit greatly. If you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. Give us a review and subscribe to The Performance Banker for more great content in upcoming episodes. This is Lorie Walker signing off.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to download and subscribe wherever you get your shows. Find more content on our YouTube channel. Link is in the show notes. This podcast is sponsored by GossagePerformanceConsulting.com.